Welcome to Misty Meadows. We farm naturally. Misty Meadows is owned and operated by Dave and Patricia Zumberge. They raise grass-fed beef cattle with a goal to farm in harmony with nature.
All right, my name is Dave Zumberge, and I run this farm here. It's an 80-acre farm, and the business is called Misty Meadows. And I'm originally from a dairy farm, and then I had a career with the state of Minnesota. The farm was eventually sold off, but you know the story about taking the boy off the farm. After I was done working for the state of Minnesota, then I bought this 80-acre farm, and I decided to raise grass-fed beef on it, finishing beef animals on grass, and yeah, that's where we're at. I started with a bull and 3 cows, and we'll have 16 calves now this spring. So I've got about between 30 and 40 calves on the farm here. All right, and I purchased this farm. I looked at different properties actually for a long time, and I settled on this particular property because it kind of you know, had the resources that I wanted. It's got some lowland, it's got a couple of duck ponds, it's got some mature oak savanna, and of course it's got the pastures, and it had 3 heated waters for the beef cattle. And but I wanted to farm in a way that that I didn't have to use commercial fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides. And so it was a good start with all the pasture. The pasture was kind of graced to the point of being a golf course, but we were able to, you know, I went into a cost share thing with the NRCS and installed all kinds of fencing, and broke those pastures down into small paddocks, and also put in a watering system so that each of the paddocks, the animals have clean water available in each of the paddocks. And then I control how far the vegetation is grazed down, and then move them to the next paddock. And so there is no use of any commercial fertilizer on the property here, no use of any herbicides or pesticides, and there's no row crop. It's just rotational grazing. Like I say, for this year, you know, I grazed them all the way to January 1st, and a lot of times by late February, March, with the warmer weather, I can actually get them back out grazing again. So that's one of the reasons I started purchasing hay instead of making it, because when you graze the stockpiled forage, you don't need to make hay. And making hay, you have to be concerned about the maintenance of the equipment, the expenditure of the fossil fuel, all the work that goes into it. You got to get in between the rain events and humidity and so on, and this way you save yourself all that headache, and you just save yourself a lot of money by letting them graze the hay while it's standing in the field. Management of having them consume stockpile is, you know, it's just that you don't really want them consuming overgrown and fully mature forage. So we try to manage the grazing so that right before vegetation goes dormant, it's at its point where it's a high quality vegetation again. And so then when it goes dormant, the cattle can continue to graze it. In fact, they'll go through they'll go through a couple of feet of snow or a foot of snow to get quality forage. They won't want to do that if it's mature, lignified type of forage. So this is an example of the cattle that are out grazing in a hayfield, pasture field in the beginning of March. You can see that they grazed this part of the field earlier in the year. Now they're on the other side, and when we have the cattle out on the land, you can see their distribution of urea and the solids. It doesn't go into a pit, and you need the fossil fuels, a tractor, and these big tanks to haul that all back out here again. It's deposited right where you want it anyway. On this field here, I don't use any commercial fertilizers or any other type of fertility. It just simply goes in the animal. The animal extracts the nutrients it needs, and then the solids and the urea are deposited back out right where you want it. So again, just out here grazing grass, right growing out of the ground, even though it's dormant, and it just saves on the fossil fuel and the parts, the grease, and everything else that goes into making hay with machinery. Okay, so this is an example of the hay that I feed the cattle in the wintertime. So what I try to do is graze the cattle as long as I can, and I grazed the cattle this year up until about January 1st. And I'll graze again as soon as some of the snow depth retracts a little bit with melting and so on. But I try to keep the hay stored, under a roof. Yeah, this is the first year that I actually purchased the hay. There is a field on this property where I can actually make the hay. But the problem with making hay is that you're removing the nutrients from the field, and it doesn't give a chance for the vegetation, the forage, to ever mature or express itself. So the idea of purchasing hay is I don't purchase any commercial fertilizer, and so I bought I don't know how many tons of hay. So that's my method of bringing fertilizer onto the place. So all this hay, one way or another, will end up as organic matter back into the soil. So that's the idea there. So this is an area where I'm overwintering the cattle, and they're in a paddock here that actually this paddock has been rested for an entire year. It has not been grazed last year. And I've staged some bales in here, and I just hook onto them with a little apparatus and pull them and unroll them right out here. You can see how it's unrolled, and the idea there is that you distribute the nutrients, urea and the solids out all along, all over in the paddock here. There is the option to bale graze them totally. Just take the wrap off the bale and let them eat right around the bale, and then that of course would concentrate your nutrients. A lot of times on a hill or in areas where you might need more nutrients, that certainly is an option too. Grazing beef cattle is really the idea is to basically mimic how the buffalo grazed 200 years ago, and the idea is to give them a paddock and control how far down they graze the cattle, graze the forage, and then let them into the next paddock. Buffalo, nobody fed hay to the buffalo. So technically, I guess I'm being kind to my animals here by feeding them hay, but I only do that when the temperature is very cold and when the snow gets to, like a foot deep or so. But, we're basically trying to mimic how the buffalo grazed over the land years ago. And they would graze in an area and then move on to another area. And there's a whole lot of information there as far as predators, and circling controlling a herd, and there's a whole bunch of facts about the herding instinct and how well they grazed an area because they were tight. So in other words, all the vegetation was grazed off. They didn't get to choose the best plants and then move on to the next area. They just grazed them all to a certain level, and over time then, if you've got the right stocking density in a paddock, and all the vegetation gets grazed, over time you get better and better grass plants and vegetation. If the stocking rate isn't high enough, then they will select the best plants and leave the plants that are more undesirable, and then over time your paddocks will become more and more weedy and less desirable. I started a system on this particular farm where I rest. I have a spreadsheet where I figure out I rest a paddock once every 7 years, and I have leased additional land in the area here, and so like last year, for example, when there's plenty of rainfall, I rested a number of paddocks. And the idea of resting a paddock is so that all of the vegetation can express itself, so it can seed out. And the more, if it gets a chance to rest, then you get to a higher level of more natural and native plants. The native plants, like I've been seeing some little blue stem on this farm now that I didn't see when I first started farming here, and the seed is in the seed bank from these native plants, and if it's managed correctly, you can move toward higher quality pastures with native plants in the pastures. I do have a background in some natural resource education, and so it was one of my goals when I bought the farm to manage it somewhat for wildlife as well. And we're standing here. This is pretty much an oak savanna. There is some green ash in here, but it's mostly oak trees. And so I'm doing what I can. You'll see some baskets around here where there's oak seedlings coming up, and they're protected from the cattle, so that what I'm trying to do is manage so that this is oak savanna for well into the future. And then another thing that I've done here is you can see that there's a deer stand behind me here. There's an area here where I've planted a bunch of fruit trees, and there's plum trees and apple trees and pear trees in here, and the idea is just to be able to have a place where animals can feed, the deer can feed, and then there's also escape cover habitat for them to hide in when they're done feeding. I've also got about 16 or 17 birdhouses on the property here. They're built for bluebirds or tree swallows, and there's a tree swallow or bluebird will eat X number of insects in a day, thousands of insects, and it actually assists with fly control on the cattle in the summer. So there's a pair of northern harriers, which their exclusive diet is almost exclusively moles, and I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing with this rotational grazing, but certainly these harriers are hanging around and feeding on these moles that are in these paddocks that I guess I didn't see those 8 years ago when I first started farming here. I've got a bat house, and I've got the barn owl house, and so I'm trying to, I dug out a couple of duck ponds on the property here, and raised a number of geese and ducks in those ponds as well. So we're just trying to mimic the diversity, the more plants we can grow, various different kinds of plants, the more wildlife that I'm seeing on the property here. So I went with the South Pole breed of cattle because of the grass genetics. Over the years, conventional beef cattle have kind of been bred to have a really big carcass, large bones, and you know, so that they can finish on grain, which is higher in protein. And but South Pole beef cattle are just smaller animals, and with a smaller carcass, doesn't take near as much protein to grow them out. They're also bred for calving ease, and just they do a better job finishing on grass. This is my original cattle yet from Great Good. That's the last one that actually came from the place. Here's home.
Are all of your cows named?
Yes, they're all named. My wife has got a spreadsheet. I actually track all the lines as far as breeding goes and so on, but you know, it was an agreement between my wife and I that if I could have the cattle, she has got some horses, but if I get the cattle, then she gets the name of them. So that's our agreement there. So, natural ecosystems are dependent upon animal impact. If we take all the animals off the land and confine them in a barn, we don't have animal impact on the land. The animal impact does a bunch of different things. It encourages diversity of plants. So we graze it off before it seeds out. The nutrients go in the cow, they come out the back end, hence no need for commercial fertilizers. And so raising grass-fed beef enhances what's natural in the environment. So you're raising plants, you're you know, allowing for forage to grow in pastures, and utilizing that forage in a very natural manner. It does not take any or very little, if any, inputs of commercial fertilizers, herbicides and pesticides and so on, mechanical machinery to harvest forage. Is, you know, if you graze into the winter, you need very little of that. So very little diesel fuel, you know, purchases of machinery. Monocultures and conventional farming, you know, there's no place in nature where just one plant grows. So the minute we start tilling soil, we have problems with bare soil. So soil wants something growing out of itself, so the immediate natural response is to grow weeds. And so then in conventional systems, we got to have herbicide and pesticide and then commercial fertilizers. And because of the row crops, you have bare ground, so those things are needed to manage so that in the end you can harvest a crop. The regenerative farmers get up in the morning and think about, how can I get more animals onto my property? How can I get more diversity of plants? How can I get more insects? And little things like, I guess we didn't cover it, but I planted the corners of fields with native flowers and native plants and flowering plants and I planted fruit trees adjacent to that so they can pollinate. So the idea is to farm in synchrony with natural ecosystems, and instead of battling against all these other problems and then battling against nature, you get up in the morning and you try to figure out, how can I farm along with a natural ecosystem. Thomas Jefferson, his goal as he allocated out land was to have as many people as possible to take ownership in land and thus be bound to it by economic interest and investment of love and work, by family loyalty, and by memory and tradition. I just think it's in our best interest to keep soil covered with vegetation and to keep working toward getting more people out onto the land, as well as the animals out of confinement and back onto the land that's covered with dense vegetation. Because in the very end, it's the healthy soil that results in healthy plants, which results in healthy animals, which results in improved health of people.
Video edited by Addison Otto. Thanks for watching.